Cliff Kingsbury was supposed to use Deebo Samuel to help level up the offense, but it turns out he didn't even use him to level up the slot receiver position.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the world. I'm David Harrison, your guy, credentialed member of the media on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, also writing for Commanders on SI. Here with you 5 days a week, and I want to thank you for joining me today. To the everydayers who come through for every single episode, a special thank you for coming through for yet another one. Today, we're going to talk about using booked reps against the Dallas Cowboys this week and how it's a sign the coaching staff may be calling it quits just a little bit earlier than the roster is, and not exploiting the Cowboys' softest spot in the defense this week would be the final nail in the plays over players coffin for me. But first, Cliff Kingsbury was supposed to use Deebo Samuel to level up his offense, but it turns out he hasn't even been able to get him to level up the slot receiver position. All of that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it's all brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. When Deebo Samuel was arrived from the San Francisco 49ers via trade, the theory was, or the belief was, that Cliff Kingsbury would use him to help level up his offense from a 2024 unit that was pretty darn good, helped get them to the NFC Championship game, did all these things. But it turns out, here as we near the end of the season, so far, he hasn't even used them to help level up the slot receiver position. I was going through just kind of thinking about, just how basic has Cliff Kingsbury's offense really gotten this season. And I said, it can't get any more basic than literally being a carbon copy of last year. And I said, okay, well, where were we supposed to see the biggest differences between this year's offense and last year's offense? Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel was supposed to unlock a whole other level of the offense this year. And not only has he not done that via scheme, to be quite honest with you, he's basically been a carbon copy of the guy that he replaced, which is Olamide Zaccheaus. And as much as I loved OZ being here, as much as I liked OZ being here and all those things, Deebo Samuel is supposed to be a better version of that type of receiver than Olamide Zaccheaus, even in his present day form. And I know he came out of San Francisco not exactly having the best production and all these things, but when I tell you that these two guys have basically been the same receiver, it's honestly a little bit surprising, even to me, going into this thinking like they were going to be similar. They're darn near the exact same guy at this point in the season. Deebo Samuel so far this season has logged 13 rushing attempts total in 15 games. Olamide Zaccheaus had 13 rush attempts all of last season. Now, again, there's still 2 games left for Deebo, but 13 in as many games as they played already, like your ceiling is probably about 15 or 16. So he's going to have about 1 to 3 more rushes unless Cliff Kingsbury just goes run crazy with Deebo here in the last couple of weeks. So literally the exact same stat line at this point in time. The directional run bias is also there. Running right side, Olamide Zaccheaus last year had 10 of his carries that were specifically jet sweep or reverse right side concepts. In 2025 so far, like I said, OZ had 10 last year. Though so far this year, Deebo has 11 to the exact same side. The left side of the formation, Olamide Zaccheaus had 3 of those last year, so a 13-10, or a total of 13, 10-3 split between right side, left side. Deebo Samuel has 2 to the left side. So Deebo has 1 more to the right, 1 less to the left. I mean, they both have Olamide Zaccheaus finished with 13 left side, right side sweep plays, jet sweep plays last year. Deebo Samuel currently has 13, and the split is damn near identical. So defenses aren't defending Deebo Samuel. They're not defending a Deebo Samuel advanced, evolved Cliff Kingsbury offense. They're defending Cliff Kingsbury's offense from 2024 that had Olamide Zaccheaus playing that position that Deebo Samuel is now. And yeah, Deebo Samuel is a better receiver. He's a better playmaker. He's a better gadget guy than Olamide Zaccheaus is. But when you add in the fact that the defense knows what's coming, it really it basically takes away that skill level advantage that Deebo Samuel gives you in the first place. The biggest advantage that an offense has against the defense is that they know what's coming and the defense doesn't know what's coming. Like, that's the biggest advantage you have. But when you have this type of stuff going on, when you have literally Deebo Samuel, I mean, literally just filling Olamide Zaccheaus' cleats, like just lift number 14 out of his cleats from 2024, put number 1 from 2025 in there, and it's the exact same usage. It's the exact same opportunities, and it's in a lot of ways the exact same production. Deebo Samuel has 373 snaps in the slot this year. Olamide Zaccheaus had 349 in the slot this year. So the snap difference is a little bit different, but not much different. And on top of it, you consider Olamide Zaccheaus didn't play with a team that had Terry McLaurin wounded as much as he's been this season, whereas Deebo Samuel has. So Deebo Samuel, his role, his Olamide Zaccheaus role hasn't even changed, hasn't even been differentiated with Terry McLaurin being out as much as he had. With Deebo being the most talented receiver on the field for most of this season because of Terry McLaurin's injuries, his workload, his role has not even changed. It's still been the Olamide Zaccheaus role. They've just cycled other guys, Chris Moore or whoever it is, into that. I don't call him number 1 receiver because number 1 can mean a lot of different things, but basically that X receiver role. And Deebo, we saw it in training camp. We saw it in the preseason. Deebo can play outside. He has capabilities to play outside. He's just been pigeonholed into this Olamide Zaccheaus role. It's the exact same role, just a different dude with a different face. Adding on to it, over 34% of Deebo Samuel's targets this year have been behind the line of scrimmage, literally nearly mirroring the high frequency at the line of scrimmage or behind role that Olamide Zaccheaus played last year. So when you hear about, or when you hear people talk about Deebo Samuel hasn't come here and changed anything, made anything better, done anything different, it's not because Deebo Samuel isn't capable. It's because Deebo Samuel isn't getting the opportunity to. Now, why is he not getting that opportunity? The best reason I can come up with is that Cliff, because he talked to us on Tuesday, and he said that essentially because of the injuries, because of the lack of consistency and availability, the scheme that he wanted to play with, the scheme he thought he was going to play with this season, is not the scheme he's been able to play with. So he's had to go to plan B. So plan A, potentially plan A with Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Jaden Daniels, all those guys from the jump. I don't know where Brian Robinson was in there, if he was in there at all before he was traded. But basically with Zach Ertz, Terry, Deebo, Jaden, maybe plan A was different. Maybe plan A was going to be different. It certainly looked different in training camp, even without Terry out there. Maybe plan A was going to be different. And plan B essentially is what they did last year. The problem I have with that, because last year's plan, listen, this team put up a lot of points, scored a lot of points, outshot a lot of teams, because this defense wasn't great last year either. So I don't really have a problem with your plan B being last year's plan A, because last year's plan A was pretty solid. The problem is, and Cliff Kingsbury has been in the NFL long enough to know this. Like, he's not a stupid man. You know, these defenses you are facing have 20 games of tape on you. So plan B can be plan A from last year, but it still has to evolve as you learn about your players, as you learn about the scheme, as you learn about how defenses are attacking you. It still has to evolve. And the fact that we are 2 games from the end of the season and Deebo Samuel has essentially the exact same usage rate and pattern that Olamide Zaccheaus had last year, it is absolutely dumbfounding to me, because it shows that essentially what you did, if I'm right, is you said, well, we had a scrap plan A, which might have been sexy as hell because of everything happening, the injuries and all that. And we got to go to plan B, which was last year's plan A. But then we're just going to ride last year's plan A all the way through the season. We're not going to tinker. We're not going to switch. Most coaches say you're going to get 5 or 6 unscouted looks every single week. If you get 5 or 6 unscouted looks, 5 or 6 things that you've never put on tape before every single week, leveraging some of these new players, leveraging some of these new opportunities, by the time you get to December, you have a very different scheme than what your old plan A, your new plan B was. And we're not seeing that. But it doesn't just stop there, because bottom line is, this weekend, if the Washington Commanders offense does not exploit the Dallas Cowboys' softest spot in the defense this week, for me, it's going to be the final nail in the coffin that says that this offense is plays over players. That and more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you by PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. You got bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, and all of it is happening all at the same time while we're all making choices every single day. One of the most fun places to make the right choice is at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, it's fast, and it's available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and Virginia, where I live and play PrizePicks, because it adds an extra layer of excitement to your holiday sports lineup. You create your lineup, takes you less than a minute if you wanted to, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's all one word, LOCKEDONNFL, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup with PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, and thank you for being a part of making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the world. If you are a true diehard Washington Commanders fan, the Everyday All Access tier is for you. You get one-on-one text access with me, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. On top of so much more, head to lockedoncommanders.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club and unlock all access. You can also find a link in the show notes for this very episode on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the episode. For the Washington Commanders, it's already looking like plays over players for Cliff Kingsbury in this offense. If they fail to exploit the Dallas Cowboys' softest spot in this defense this week, for me, it's going to be the final nail in the coffin to judging or assessing or analyzing or whatever word you want to use for it, that this is a plays over players scheme. And just to be quite frank, it's never going to be something that I'm going to be on board with when that's what I see happening, because the Washington Commanders, like I said, you have Deebo Samuel. This is a receiver that has some similar skill sets to Olamide Zaccheaus, but he is much more refined than Olamide Zaccheaus, has a lot more experience than Olamide Zaccheaus, and has the overall better ability than OZ had. And I'm a big OZ guy, but that's just the bottom line of it. And what we have seen is Olamide Zaccheaus and Deebo Samuel basically be the same person in this Cliff Kingsbury offense. You're just paying one of them a whole heck of a lot more money and sending draft capital to the 49ers. It's only a 5th round pick, but still sending a draft pick to the 49ers instead of potentially bringing OZ back, which if he was told, hey, dude, you might be able to have this number 3 or even number 2 role, this gadget screen type of role that you had last year for us, same amount of reps, maybe even more depending on injuries, OZ might have come back instead of going out to the Chicago Bears, where he's going to be heading to the playoffs as part of the NFC North champions, although I don't know his health status right now, so don't quote me on that. But bottom line is, you bring in Deebo, there's got to be a reason why. And I have to believe the reason you bring in Deebo Samuel is not to do exactly what Olamide Zaccheaus did. Let's get a little bit deeper into this, right? Because not only did I break down all that stuff, how they're being used, all this other stuff, but Olamide Zaccheaus was actually doing it better. Olamide Zaccheaus last year averaged 12.6 yards per touch in this role. Deebo, 9.5 yards per touch. You're talking about a 3.1 yard per touch difference between Olamide Zaccheaus last year and Deebo Samuel this year. That 9.5 yards per touch, the lowest average of Deebo Samuel's entire career. Deebo's averaging just 8.1 yards per target, which is the lowest since his rookie season. Compare that to Olamide Zaccheaus, who was averaging 9.2 yards per target in the same offense last year. Why? Partially because defenses, again, they had 20 games of tape on this offense from last year. So when you have just one dude filling another dude's role, it's not going to take long for defenses to sniff that out, and they're going to dedicate more resources to it. They're also going to dedicate more resources to Deebo Samuel. Why? Because he's known as a better player than Olamide Zaccheaus is. So a lot of that is going to contribute into that deficiency. And the bottom line is the software, which is the scheme in this analogy, is refusing to use the hardware, which is the player and his ability to do more than just take screens and end arounds and jet sweeps and these kinds of things. Deebo Samuel this year, 4 catches on just 6 targets, 20 plus yards downfield. That's all he's gotten. 66.7% catch rate, over 100 yards of offense on those 6 targets. Olamide Zaccheaus last year, 2 catches on 4 targets, a 50% catch rate, and about 80 yards total. So while you have these guys filling the same role, Deebo is proving to you in the very small opportunities he's getting, by the way, that he is a better downfield target than Olamide Zaccheaus is, which we already know this, but if you need any evidence, the evidence is there in the reps that you've allowed him to go deep in, yet the scheme has only targeted him 2 more times than it did Olamide Zaccheaus all of last season. And that brings us to the biggest weakness in this Dallas Cowboys defense, which is something that can help open up those deep shots to guys like Deebo Samuel, if you're willing to use them. And that is the potential absence of linebacker DeMarvion Overshown. DeMarvion Overshown dealing with a concussion, likely going to miss this week's game against the Washington Commanders. He is the anchor of their pass defense there in the middle of the field, logging 140 coverage snaps and absorbing 14 targets along the way, and having the best grade of all the out of all the Cowboys linebackers and safeties. DeMarvion Overshown has the best pass defense, pass coverage grade on Pro Football Focus. So without him on the field, that leaves a very big gap in the Dallas Cowboys defense, which is already not very good as it is. And that is an area where a guy like Ben Sinnott, like we said, if you can start to accentuate players over plays, what players over plays means in a nutshell, do what your players are best at, not the plays that you love the most. What we're seeing here with this mirror image of Deebo Samuel and Olamide Zaccheaus from 1 year ago to this year is that Cliff Kingsbury is using his plays, his roles. I have a guy do this. I have a guy, literally running a jet sweep left to right the exact same amount of times 1 year to the next, literally running a jet sweep right to left the exact same amount of times left to right. Like, it's mind-blowing to me still. Plays over players. That is what I'm seeing from Cliff Kingsbury's office. And again, maybe plan A was not that way, but plan B certainly became that way. And the problem is, not only did it become that way, it has stayed that way all season long with a guy that, like I said, was supposed to be part of the key to unlocking your defense. If you can use that gap with DeMarvion Overshown not in there, use Ben Sinnott's athleticism, use his ability to get open, use his ability to run routes, use his ability to block, use his ability to do whatever in the middle of the field, that's going to naturally shrink that defense in. Then you're going to have opportunities to use Deebo Samuel for more than just jet sweeps and screens. Hit him maybe with a deep pass. Even if you just target him and it comes close, make the Cowboys fear Deebo Samuel as a downfield target, because right now the only guy you got is Terry McLaurin, and on occasion Treylon Burks has been able to step up a little bit here and there, but there's no consistent downfield target outside of Terry McLaurin on this team. Even if it's just for this one game, show the Dallas Cowboys you have the ability to go out there and do it, and that's going to help open some things up for Terry McLaurin on the other side, because everybody already knows Terry McLaurin is the main guy, of course, downfield, all of those things. And while we're having this conversation, use Terry McLaurin just a little bit differently as well. So again, get out of that, break those tendencies, accentuate the ability to do or to take over the Dallas Cowboys defense, especially with Overshown potentially out of the roster. The problem is the booked reps comments from Cliff Kingsbury this week don't really lend any confidence that that's what we're going to see this weekend. Instead, it sounds like we're going to see more of the same. And it kind of sounds to me like the coaching staff, at least part of it, is just coasting to the end of the season so they can get this thing over with. And that is a big problem because your roster isn't doing that. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Using booked reps this week for the Washington Commanders against the Dallas Cowboys, to me, is a sign that at least part of this coaching staff has already checked out of this season. And it's a shame because it's happening before the roster is checked out of this season. We've given a lot of credit and a lot of praise to this roster for continuing to fight, continuing to be unified, continuing to have high energy, high effort, all this stuff. Even with everything that's going on this season, even with every single turn they take, another player goes down or they just get punished for the effort they try to put through. But honestly, I'll tell you right now, hearing Cliff Kingsbury talk about that they're gonna run this Thursday against Dallas Cowboys, quote unquote concepts that we're comfortable with, and quote unquote booked reps from training camp, that is a huge problem for me. Because again, like I said, I can understand if plan A coming into the year was supposed to be this thing. We got Jaden, we got Terry, we got Zach, we got Deebo, we got maybe even Noah. It's going to be this type of offense. This is what we want to do, all these things, and it's going to be sexy, and it's going to be new, and it's going to be fresh, and it's going to be evolved from what we did in 2024. And if you're plan B from that, like, hey, dude, if we miss some key players and do all these things, let's go back to what we did in 2024 because it was highly successful. Even that, if we get to that level, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. The problem is if you're going back to your plan A from last year, from 2024, if that's your new plan B, you have to realize at a certain point, your plan B was successful in 2024 because Terry was there, because Jaden was there, because Zach was there. When you lose Terry first, then Jaden, no, you lose Jaden first, then you lose Terry. You have to understand your plan B that relied on Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin is no longer viable. And you got to start building that plan C. And nobody is sitting here saying, like, it should have just happened overnight. Like, week 3, boom, Terry McLaurin goes out against the Raiders. Jaden Daniels went out against the Packers. Coming into week 4, you should have a plan C. It should just be done. Nobody is saying that, but you should be able to see signs throughout the weeks of this new wrinkle, that new wrinkle. Again, most coaches will tell you that they see 5 or 6 unscouted looks. If you're bringing even 4, if you bring 4 unscouted looks in week 4, 4 more in week 5, et cetera, by the time you get here to week 17, you've got about 30 to 40 new plays potentially that you put in. And even that may be a little bit too much, like just 20 to 30. But we're not seeing anything different than what we've seen pretty much all season long, which to me looks like what we saw all 2024 long, which explains to you why even some of the worst defenses this team has faced, some of the worst rushing defenses this team has faced, have been able to bottle up their rushing attack. Some of the worst passing defenses this team has faced. Hello, Dallas Cowboys, the first time this season, has been able to bottle up this passing offense. It's because of this. And now you're telling us here before this final, game against the Dallas Cowboys, before your final game of the season against Philadelphia Eagles, that you're basically going to rely on the same things. And you're saying that the reason your scheme that you didn't get to operate with happens because, these injuries have been happening since the beginning of the year. This is not new. And I'm sorry, but adjustments are something that every coach has to be able to do. You have to be able to adjust on the battlefield to the ever-changing environment of the scenario. That's just how it is. It's adapt or die. And clearly this offense has died this season. Josh Johnson over Sam Hartman, final confirmation of that. Josh Johnson's got the veteran presence and all that stuff. Sam Hartman coming in on a short week is a problem if you were to ever do that. And Sam Hartman, to me, saying that all he's been running, or at least the majority of the time he's been running the practice squad, scout team, not their offense, to me is a little bit of an explanation for that too. I'm satisfied with that explanation, to be quite honest with you. Pro Bowl voting came out on Tuesday as well. Not surprising with the way the defense and the offense have been playing. Only one Pro Bowler, and he came from special teams. Punter Tress Way is going to his 3rd Pro Bowl. The special teams, I know they've had their moments, problems. Jalen Lane has had some muff punts and the muff kickoff and all that stuff, but for the most part, the special teams unit has been the most consistent part of this team. Hat tip to special teams coordinator Larry Izzo. Tress Way is obviously a big part of that. So Tress Way getting the Pro Bowl nod. Congratulations to him. Jalen Lane is an alternate return specialist, although with that ankle injury, I'm not sure he would take the spot even if he was offered it. And Nick Ballore, an alternate special teams player as well on those rosters. That's going to do it for today's episode. A little bit of a deep dive into the stagnation of Cliff Kingsbury's offense this season, why I think it might have happened, what the data says of it. And again, just continues to blow my mind that Olamide Zaccheaus and Deebo Samuel are essentially the same person in this offense. Next time on Locked On Commanders, crossover Thursday. Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys and I are going to break down this week's matchup on Thursday, Christmas Day. Make sure you are subscribed and follow Locked On Commanders so you get all of the latest episodes. And in the meantime, you can follow me on X at DHarrison82 or on Instagram at DHarrison80_82. If you're in need of a last-minute holiday gift or someone keeps asking you what you want, make it easy for them and ask for the Everydayer Club. You get ad-free episodes of this show, exclusive Discord server access, and more. Subscriptions can be gifted through lockedoncommanders.supercast.com for your next listen of the day. Check out the Locked On NFL podcast twice per day on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's episode. To the Everydayers, I see you. I appreciate you every single day. And to everybody, until next time, please stay safe, be kind to one another, and we'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.